Welcome back to another Outdoor Philosophy here on our Walk in Christ. So if you are not familiar with this particular series, this is not an overly Christian series. Really, it was a series that I started on my Switch to Linux channel, but I decided to move it over here so I could free up more time over there for more tech news and things. So we're basically go through some books on this, and we are just starting this one. Of course, the introduction to the book was last week. We're going to be doing the book Working with Emotional Intelligence. So this is a follow-up to the book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, which I'm guessing, I have not read this yet. We're reading it together now. And I'm going to guess that Emotional Intelligence is probably a slightly better book. I just like the general trend. This is like a sequel. It's like in the movie world. The sequels aren't always as good. This is taking the concept of emotional intelligence that he talked about, and it is really going in there and focusing more on applying this entire concept to the workplace, which for me, I've owned my own businesses for a better part of a decade now. And so this type of stuff, I oftentimes find a little more on the hokey side. Oftentimes we'll see a lot of corporate execs love these types of business motivation success books because they try and take this and they get all excited about it and they throw it onto their team and they can't seem to understand why their team just doesn't care as much. It's because they just don't have as much incentive. So that's just kind of a general bias that I have, just to introduce it. But we're going to go ahead and dive into this guy and talk about it. So I read through chapter 1, which is called The New Yardstick. So, of course, they're talking about the new yardstick because we're talking about a shift and a trend from utilizing the IQ, looking at the EQ. Now, he does make a statement here I disagree with. Well, maybe we'll get to that when I actually come to that. I'm going to go sequentially through this. So basically he starts out just saying that we need a new yardstick. Of course, a yardstick is to measure. We need a new means of measurement to determine where and how we are moving along in our progress. And this entire concept of intelligence, your IQ, necessarily isn't been working quite as well. And it's a reality. Just because somebody's smart doesn't mean they're going to do good at work. And so basically this is saying this is their proposal for a different type of model. And they're talking about this, and they explain, which is more or less a summary of emotional intelligence, a different way of being smart. Instead of being smart with intellects, with brains, with maybe trivia, maybe whatever else, instead it's knowing how to appropriately respond in a situation. Some people might differentiate these as book smarts versus street smarts. So this is more of the street smarts, less of the book smarts, and how does that apply itself in the workplace? And so, of course, he talks a little bit about some misconceptions surrounding this. You know, why do we need to take time to make sure people are emotionally strong and things like that? But he talks then about this being a missing priority. So I guess some vice president of Citibank told him emotional intelligence is the underlying premise for all management training, is what he says. So the president of a 100-person job shop in aerospace industry tells me that one of the main companies he supplies, Allied Signal, requires that he and all his employees be trained in the ubiquitous quality circle approach. Quote, they wanted us to work better as a team, which is great, he said, but we found it is hard. How can you be a team if you're not a group first? And to bond as a group, we needed to boost our emotional intelligence. There's another quote, we've been very effective at increasing our profitability through methods like re-engineering and speeding up the turnaround cycle for new products, but even with some big success, our curve of improvement is flattening. A manager at Simon's told him, quote, we need to use our people better, maximize our human assets to make the curve arise again, so we're trying to make the company more emotionally intelligent. And that, to me, is why I disagree with the premise of some of these books. Did you hear that language? We need to use our people better to achieve this company's goal. It's about using people. And we don't want to use people. We want to love and appreciate all the people around us. We don't want to use people. And that's why I have a disagreement with a lot of these types of things and a lot of these types of premises. But let's go ahead and move on. So he does talk here in this section, just skipping over a few things here. Of course, they did in this Churning the New Dread, kind of talks about this whole downsizing issue. And this is the biggest problem with a lot of these companies right now, is that we're not, as workers in this country, we're not as ready to just commit ourselves lock, stock, and barrel to the company, because it's very clear that the company is just going to let us go if it wants to. And that's the sad reality of the matter. We see this type of stuff, and we start to think, it'd be great to go in and do the best job. And the reality is, particularly if we're Christians, we have to do the best job we can possibly do. But we can understand why it's difficult for some people to put forth the best effort when they could be gone tomorrow just for being a hard worker. I mean, that's the reality. He talks about this, and developing emotional intelligence is good for us as people. I'm not knocking the concept of the book. What I'm knocking is that teaching people emotional intelligence is automatically going to raise your company up, because we live in a time period when companies use their people and then cast them off when somebody cheaper can be thrown to that same exact position. And that's the reality. So while I agree with the entire concept of emotional intelligence, I don't think this is going to solidify companies and just, this is the final cement that's going to make it perfect. It's not. It's not. So then they talk about a coming crisis, a rising IQ and a dropping EQ. I agree only 50%. I agree that our EQ is dropping. As a culture, as a society, and I'm speaking from the American society, those watching internationally, from the American society, we have become a nation of spoiled, rotten, immature children. We have no emotional growth at all in our life anymore. And it's so prevalent in everything that we're doing, just how much this is just shifting into this massive, irate immaturity everywhere. It's got to be all about us and our success and everything we want, and us, me, now. That's a child. A child is not emotionally developed. And that is a key premise that I agree with him completely, that our EQ is dropping. But he says that we have a higher than ever IQs, and I completely disagree. A lot of current exams and the latest thing, and it might just be the fact that this book is, I think this book is probably 2 decades old at this point in time. Let's see when this book was written. So this book is, 1998. So, 20 years ago, maybe that was true, but in the more recent years, with over-reliance on computer technologies, with constant internet-connected everything, we've become a society of bumbling morons, not just emotionally, but intellectually. As we talked about in the last Outdoor Philosophy series, where I did the book Building a Bridge to the 18th Century by Neil Postman, which is on the Switch to Linux channel. If you haven't seen it, you want to watch it, go to check it out over on that channel. That particular book, I agree with a lot of this premise there, where we were in that arena, in which case we're a people that are so relied on our technologies that our IQs are dropping. Even in the college classrooms, in the high school classrooms, we are giving these kids these ready access to these online resources, these e-learning resources. And I myself, understand, I'm not speaking out of turn. I have an earned doctorate. I was a college professor. I was a teacher to the core. And I also sold this type of academic software in another career part of my life. I've sold all this software. I know academics in and out, and I will tell you, what causes a student to learn is to sit down and do the work. Computers always make it worse, because learning is about the process, not about the answer. And there is not a computerized homework system in the world that grades you on your process. It always looks at your answer. And because of this, our IQs are also dropping. We are becoming a society, we don't have higher IQs than ever. Our IQs are dropping. Our EQs are non-existent. We are a nation of spoiled children. And that's a problem. And that's really why I like the book Emotional Intelligence so much, because it really helps to teach us what it means to develop emotionally. And I don't know, maybe we're seeing some of this in other cultures and countries as well. If you guys from different nations can let us know in the comments down below, that'd be great. I'm speaking as a participant in the American society right now. So of course he talks about, what do employers want? Well, maybe before the employers ask what employers want, maybe they should start by asking, what do our employees want? Maybe employees just want a steady job, a guarantee of a paycheck unless they do something rashly wrong. Maybe we want benefits. Maybe we want appropriate pay. Realize that as much as I love the company Amazon, I publish through Amazon, I sell through Amazon, I have affiliate links through Amazon in full disclosure. They also, though, don't seem to pay their employees a livable wage in most of their industry. They put up a big warehouse in Columbus, Ohio, and a statewide research. They looked at that, and what they found is that of all of those people in this statewide research, 10% of the new employees had to be on food stamps just to live. Amazon just wasn't paying, and they're paying wages so low, it's staggering. It's just enough to pay Uncle Sam and not enough to do anything else. And that's a problem. But let's humor them. What do employers want? Okay, a national survey of what employers are looking for in entry-level workers, qualifying entry-level, specific technical skills are now less important than the underlying ability to learn the job, which makes sense because colleges aren't really preparing students to do any individual work unless they're going to a trade school. A trade school teaches you to do the exact work. A regular college really doesn't. So what do they want? Listening and oral communication. Adaptability and creative response to setback and obstacles. So how well do you bounce back from some part of your plan that didn't go right? Personal management, confidence, motivation to work towards goals, a sense of wanting to develop one's career and take pride in accomplishments. And this brings us back full circle. Why should I spend a lot of time as an employee dedicating myself to building my career when tomorrow you're going to can me for some cheaper guy that just came out of college? That's kind of that flip side of the coin. So that's, again, one of these things I don't necessarily like about these books geared towards the workplace, growing and building the workplace. These are written for corporate execs, not for guys on the ground who know that their job is fickle. And that's kind of the point. And maybe I'm being a little too cynical, but I've also been in the world a lot, in a lot of different places. So with that being said, but as far as personally, as individuals, we should focus ourselves on personal management. We should focus ourselves on confidence. We should focus ourselves on motivation to work towards goals and a sense of developing one's career, but just understanding your career is not necessarily your job. That's kind of the difference. And take pride in your accomplishments. These are all great things that we need to have as people. We need to have these as people. Group and interpersonal effectiveness, cooperativeness, and teamwork skills at negotiating disagreements. Again, good skills to have, hard to really apply in the workplace at times. And effectiveness in the organization, wanting to make a contribution and leadership potential. Again, I will defer to my prior comments. So then the final conclusion of this is just how this entire chapter is going to kind of walk through and kind of build for us a framework by which we're going to utilize this to say our ultimate goal is to focus on those things. How can we as individuals grow maturely and apply that? Let's just move this beyond a 9-to-5 career or an office type job. Let's apply this to anything we do, because anything we have in this, I can also apply to my individual businesses, whether that's my web design business, my author business, my content creation business. These are all portions of businesses and things that I do. And you can apply things to this in anywhere that you work, even if you're a freelancer. And so let's just go ahead and conclude with that part there. So with that being said, that is the beginning introductory chapter on working with emotional intelligence. I think it'll be a fun journey. I may be a little bit too cynical on it, but we'll see what happens as we go through. Like I said, I haven't read this, but I've read a lot of books like this, and I find that they're oftentimes more geared towards your corporate execs than they are geared towards the people on the ground. And so with that being said, let's just go ahead and conclude this here. Don't forget to check the description below for any links if you want to help support this channel. I'll kind of leave it at that. Just go ahead and browse around down there. Also, take a look at the links for the Amazon Associates account down there as well. So, thanks for coming along on this outdoor philosophy.